Welcome back to our Daniel study, and we are in Daniel chapter 4. And there's a lot of unique things about this section of scripture. For one, we are at the end of King Nebuchadnezzar's rule as king, and he is the longest ruling king in the Babylonian kingdom, around 40 plus years. And here is at his later days. We know he's had an ups and downs in terms of trusting in the God of Israel and trusting in the one true, the highest of all. And he is still struggling. His pride and the grandeur of his kingdom continues to pull him down. But in this letter, he's writing it, first of all, this is one place where we see a pagan writing in the Bible. Another is that he writes it like a letter, like he's writing something to someone about an experience that he had with God. And so its tone it's different, and we have seen the rest of the narrative in this. Also, this section starts and ends with a doxology, just this glorifying of God. And so it starts with kind of the happy ending, but first he's going to tell you that, and then he's going to set up, but here's what had to happen for me to get there. So at this point, Daniel is in his 50s. King Nebuchadnezzar has been ruling for around 43 years. He's towards the end of his rule and reign, and he's been the longing ruling king here at this point. But he has another dream, and this dream really disturbs him, and he calls once again his council of magicians, enchanters, all these people that really had knowledge, not from God, but from other things that were demonic and dark and really didn't point to the one true God. And Daniel kind of lets them go and go ahead, see if you have the truth, and none of them could answer the king. And so on verse 8, chapter 4, verse 8, it says, "At last Daniel came in before me." Kind of this sense of finally somebody that can tell me the truth. Here he is in an age where he has credibility. He's been there consistently following the one true God. And it says, "He who was named Belshazzar after the name of my God," right? Remember, he's writing about something in the past. And so he's still associating him with this name that was given to Daniel when he came in. And they kind of put this Babylonian identity on him. But then he says, but Daniel came in, right? Meaning he knows his true identity, right? It's not this Babylonian pagan identity. It's his identity as a follower of God, as one who trusts the one true God, the high God, and follows the law and is obedient to all the things that he has committed to, right? From the beginning, we see he resolved to do this. And in the next section, it says, "In whom is the spirit of the holy gods?" And I told him the dream. Whom is the spirit of the holy gods? This phrase right here is repeated a few times. Next verse, it says, "And I know the spirit of the holy gods is in you." Again, right, this recognition that Daniel had something beyond just a name that was foreign. He had something that was divine within him that gave him power and wisdom to reveal the insights that the king couldn't figure out, and neither could any of the wisest persons in his kingdom. And finally, verse 18, "I know you are able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in you." Again, right? This consistent understanding that because of his identity and that the holiness of God was within him, the wisdom of God and the power of God was within him, he could reveal truth and he could trust him in these things. So what is the question that we ask here as we navigate the difficulties of this opposing culture that is contaminated with evil? There's darkness, there is a lot of tension for you and me as followers of Jesus. How do we navigate? How do we engage? How can we have influence to impact our culture? Right, as followers of Jesus, we've been called to make disciples, to engage in the places where we live, work, and play. But sometimes we may think, well, I don't have the place, I don't have the position. How am I going to do it, right? And we sometimes overthink it and overcomplicate it. I can think of a time early on before I started ministry. I was working at a school. I was right out of college. I was in my early 20s, and I was at a middle school, and I just needed a job. Right, I was serving at a church as a volunteer. I was trying to continue school, and so I started as a teacher assistant at a middle school. And I'm a lot of times I was like, what am I doing here, right? I wish I could just do full-time ministry. And my mind was there. But God had, no, I have you here. There's a purpose, there's a plan for you. And I couldn't see it for a long time. But one of the cool things that happened was that the principal just took a liking to me and would talk to me. And he was like, hey, you're a Christian, right? And he was very honest with me. I remember one time he tells me, look, I don't go to church often. I do believe in God and I pray sometimes, when things get hard. And then he says, but I know you're a Christian and I would appreciate it a lot if you prayed for our school. And then he kind of goes, and maybe even pray with a few other teachers that believe in God. And so there was this sense in him that, I know that you go to church and I wish you would pray because this school needs it. And to be honest with you, we were in a very difficult neighborhood in the Dallas community. There was a lot of things going on, a lot of just hard things. And so prayer was one of the things that we started doing. This led to a lot of spiritual conversations with other faculty. And really, I don't know the extent of that impact, but the things that I was thinking was, I wish I could be over there and doing this. And once I am in full-time ministry, and God said, no, I have you in that place, in that position. You may think it's not very influential, but your identity gives you influence. And so as a son of God, as a daughter of God, you have influence because of that. So that is a question that sometimes we can struggle with. But another thing is that we see that at the very end of this ruling king, he turns to God. Finally, almost like this ultimate time of humility, and he realizes, because in this dream it prophesies that he was going to be cut down, that his kingdom that went up to the heavens in this picture of a tree would be cut down, and he would be humbled and live as a beast for 7 years. And after this, he comes to his senses, and you can read in this section, it says, now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven. Right? There's this whole section, a doxology, a glorifying of the one true God at the end of his reign. And what a powerful testimony that the faithfulness of Daniel led to faith in this person that was up and down, up and down. So our faithfulness can lead to other people coming to faith. And so there's so many great things about this, but I do want us to think about our identity. So how are you and I made for this? Well, if we turn to Galatians chapter 4, verse 6, there's a verse there that I think really wraps this all together, that was true for Daniel and it's true for us today. See, in the Old Testament, the Spirit of God came and went, but here for us in Jesus, the Spirit of God remains in us, and so they changes everything. So here, listen to this. And because you are sons, God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. And so two things that are here and how it displays really the things that we saw in this chapter is that Daniel's identity came from God. And so you and I, our identity is sons and daughters. And so this identity carries us through those difficult times, through that darkness, that's opposition in our culture, so that we don't just disassociate or separate or ignore it or just assimilate with it. We saw that Daniel kept his identity and he continued to persist in following God and speaking truth in hard times, right? His identity gave him that influence. But here's the other thing. We're made for this because of the Spirit of God is within us. It doesn't ebb and flow. It doesn't come and go. The presence of God is within each one of us, and it empowers us. It gives us the wisdom and the power of God to live out his truth and be salt and light. It says the Spirit of his Son, he has sent it into our hearts, and it reminds us, it encourages us, and it empowers us to do the things he's called us to do. So that's why you and I are made for this.